The first warning came on a Tuesday morning when every screen on Earth displayed the same message simultaneously. Television broadcasts cut to static, computer monitors flickered, and even basic digital clocks showed the alien symbols that somehow every human could understand perfectly. Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. You will surrender unconditionally within 7 solar rotations or face complete annihilation. This is not a negotiation. This is an order. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the emergency command center beneath the Swiss Alps, watching as world leaders scrambled to respond. The message had appeared in every language, in every script, burned into the minds of 7 billion people at the exact same moment. The technology required for such a feat was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Status report, Chen demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos of the war room. Ma'am, we've detected massive energy signatures at the edge of our solar system, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. 12 vessels, each roughly the size of Manhattan. They're not moving, just waiting. Chen studied the long-range sensor data with growing unease. The ships appeared to be constructed from materials that absorbed most forms of scanning, creating dark voids against the star field. Only their immense gravitational signatures revealed their presence, bending light around them like cosmic shadows. What about our defensive capabilities? Asked General Morrison, the head of Earth's unified military, command that had been hastily formed just 3 years prior when humanity first detected signs of intelligent life beyond their solar system. Our entire space fleet consists of 47 vessels, Chen replied grimly. Most are research ships with minimal defensive capabilities. The largest weapon we have is the orbital defense platform around Luna, and that was designed to deflect asteroids, not engage in combat with alien warships. The past century had been one of remarkable technological advancement for humanity. They had mastered fusion power, developed quantum computers, and established colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Medical science had virtually eliminated disease, and artificial intelligence helped manage the complex logistics of an interplanetary civilization. But weapons of war had taken a backseat to exploration and progress. There has to be something we can do, Morrison insisted. We can't just roll over and surrender to these things. We don't even know what they want with Earth. Dr. Elizabeth Ward, Earth's leading xenobiologist, looked up from her analysis station. Based on the energy patterns we're detecting, I believe they're after our biosphere. Earth's biodiversity is essentially unique in this region of the galaxy. We're talking about millions of species that evolved in ways that simply can't be replicated elsewhere. So they want to strip mine our planet, Chen concluded. Take everything that makes Earth special and leave us with a dead rock. The next few days passed in a blur of desperate planning. Earth's governments worked around the clock to find any possible solution. Scientists proposed everything from diplomatic contact to mass evacuation, but every scenario ended the same way. Humanity simply didn't have the technology to fight back against ships that could appear anywhere in the solar system without warning and possessed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. On the 4th day, something changed. Deep space monitoring stations detected movement from the alien fleet. One ship had broken formation and was accelerating toward Earth at impossible speeds. At its current rate, it would reach Earth's orbit in less than 18 hours. They're coming early, Torres announced, his voice tight with fear. The ship will be within weapons range of Earth in 17 hours and 23 minutes. Chen closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her 50-year career, she had never faced anything remotely like this situation. Every battle, every conflict, every crisis had always had some kind of solution, some way to fight back or negotiate. But this was different. This was extinction. Admiral, came a voice from across the command center. Dr. Marcus Webb, the head of the Deep Space Research Division, was approaching with a tablet in his hands and an expression she couldn't quite read. What is it, Webb? Ma'am, we've been monitoring communications from our deep space research stations, the ones we sent beyond the outer planets to study dark matter formations. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. Some of them have been sending back very strange data over the past 6 months. We thought it was equipment malfunction, but now what? Now I think we might have found something the aliens don't know about. Something that could change everything. Webb activated his tablet, and a 3-dimensional map of the solar system appeared in the air above them. Small dots marked the positions of various research stations and vessels scattered throughout space. But there were other markers, dozens of them in regions where no human missions had ever been sent. These signals started appearing about 6 months ago, Webb explained. At first we assumed they were natural phenomena or equipment errors. But the patterns are too complex, too organized, and they're all coming from areas that should be completely empty space. Chen studied the display with growing interest. The unknown signals formed a rough sphere around the solar system, like a shell of hidden objects watching and waiting. What kind of signals? Quantum entanglement bursts, gravity wave fluctuations, energy patterns that match our most advanced propulsion systems, but amplified by orders of magnitude. Webb's voice grew more excited as he continued. Admiral, I think there are ships out there. Human ships. Ships we never built. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Morrison was the first to speak. That's impossible. We know exactly how many ships we've built and where they all are. Unless, Dr. Ward said slowly, someone else built them for us. Chen felt a chill run down her spine as pieces of a larger puzzle began to fall into place. Humanity's rapid technological advancement over the past century. The breakthrough discoveries that had seemed to come from nowhere. The sudden appearance of technologies that scientists claimed would take decades to develop, yet somehow materialized in research labs around the world. Pull up the files on Project Deep Void, Chen ordered. Authorization code Chen Alpha 77. Ma'am, that project is classified above my clearance level, Torres replied. Override it. Emergency authorization. The files appeared on the main screen and Chen's blood ran cold. Project Deep Void had been a theoretical research initiative, exploring the possibility of humanity making contact with its own future civilization through quantum mechanics and temporal manipulation. It had been dismissed as science fiction and officially terminated 20 years ago. But the timestamps on the files showed continued activity, right? Up to the present day, my God, whispered. Dr. Ward, we've been in contact with ourselves all along. The revelation about Project Deep Void sent shockwaves through the command center. Admiral Chen found herself staring at files that shouldn't exist, documenting technology that humanity had supposedly never developed. The quantum communication logs showed conversations between present-day Earth and something identified only as Temporal Station Alpha. Get me Dr. Harrison immediately, Chen commanded. Dr. James Harrison had been the lead scientist on Deep Void before its official termination. If anyone could explain what they were looking at, it would be him. Within minutes, Harrison appeared on the main communications screen from his laboratory in Geneva. The elderly physicist looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. His wild gray hair and intense blue eyes gave him the appearance of a man who had seen things that would drive others mad. Admiral, I've been waiting for this call for 20 years, Harrison said without preamble. The alien ships arrived exactly when the temporal calculations predicted they would. Explain. Now. Harrison took a deep breath and activated his own display. Complex mathematical equations and timeline diagrams filled the screen behind him. Project Deep Void was never truly terminated. We discovered something incredible during our quantum entanglement experiments. We made contact with humanity's future, roughly 800 years from now. The command center erupted in confused voices, but Chen silenced them with a gesture. Continue. Our future selves warned us about this exact invasion. They told us that in their timeline, this moment was a crucial turning point for human civilization. The aliens you're facing now are called the Devourers. They've consumed hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, stripping them of all biological matter and leaving dead husks behind. Dr. Ward leaned forward intensely. But if our future selves knew this was coming, why didn't they prevent it? Because they learned something important, Harrison replied. This invasion is what forces humanity to become what we're destined to become. The pressure, the desperation, the near-extinction event, it triggers a transformation in human consciousness and technology that we would never achieve otherwise. Admiral Chen felt a mixture of anger and confusion. Are you telling me that our future selves allowed billions of people to be put at risk for some kind of evolutionary leap? Not allowed, Admiral, orchestrated. Harrison's expression became deadly serious. For the past century, we've been receiving technological blueprints, scientific breakthroughs, and strategic information from the future. Every major advancement humanity has made has been guided by temporal communication with our descendants. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. Chen thought about all the miraculous discoveries of the past 100 years. Fusion power that had been achieved decades ahead of schedule, quantum computers that seemed to design themselves, medical breakthroughs that came in perfect sequence to eliminate diseases one by one. The ship's web detected, Chen said slowly. They're from the future, aren't they? The Black Armada, Harrison confirmed. 800 years of human technological evolution, compressed into a fleet of vessels that exist partially outside normal space-time. They've been positioned around our solar system for months, waiting for the precise moment to reveal themselves. Lieutenant Commander Torres was frantically working at his station, cross-referencing the temporal data with current sensor readings. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the alien vessel approaching Earth. They're preparing to fire some kind of weapon. On the main display, the alien ship had come to a stop just beyond the moon's orbit. Its dark hull seemed to absorb light itself, creating a void against the starfield. Energy readings spiked as weapon systems came online, targeting the helpless planet below. This is it, Harrison announced. The moment everything changes. Admiral, you need to broadcast a very specific message on all frequencies. The words I'm about to give you will trigger the activation of the Black Armada. Chen hesitated. Everything in her training told her not to trust information this incredible, this convenient. But Earth had less than an hour before the alien weapon fired and conventional military options had been exhausted. What's the message? Tell them humanity chooses to evolve. Activate Protocol Omega Black. The children are ready to meet their parents. That's it? That's it? But Admiral, once you send that message, there's no going back. Humanity as we know it will cease to exist. We'll become something new, something capable of standing against forces like the Devourers, but we'll also become something that our current selves might not recognize. Chen looked around the command center at the faces of her staff. These people had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth and its people. Now she was being asked to gamble everything on the word of a man claiming to speak for humanity's future. The alien ship's weapons reached full charge. Energy readings showed a power output capable of cracking continents. Do it, Chen ordered. Broadcast the message on all frequencies. Torres typed rapidly, then looked up. Message transmitted, Admiral. For a moment, nothing happened. The alien ship continued its targeting sequence, and the hidden vessel's web had detected remained silent. Chen began to wonder if they had been deceived. If Project Deep Void was an elaborate hoax or the delusion of a brilliant but unstable mind, then space itself began to change. The void around Earth's solar system rippled like water, and shapes began to emerge from what had appeared to be empty space. Not 12 ships like the alien fleet, but hundreds, thousands. A vast armada of vessels that seemed to be constructed from crystallized darkness and shaped light. Each ship in the Black Armada was unique, as if they had been grown rather than built. Some resembled massive organic forms like space-dwelling creatures with hulls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Others were geometric impossibilities, structures that folded in on themselves in ways that hurt to look at directly. My God, whispered Dr. Ward. What are they? Harrison's voice came through the communication link, filled with awe despite having known this moment would come. They're us, Doctor. Humanity evolved beyond our current limitations, part biological, part technological, part something entirely new. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which is why our sensors couldn't detect them until they chose to reveal themselves. The lead alien vessel, which had been preparing to destroy Earth, suddenly found itself surrounded by dozens of Black Armada ships. The contrast was striking. Where the alien vessel absorbed light and seemed to drain energy from space around it, the human ships pulsed with vibrant colors and seemed to add life to their surroundings. A new message appeared on every screen across Earth, but this time it was clearly human in origin. The text scrolled across displays in warm golden letters that seemed to glow with inner light. Citizens of Earth, this is Admiral Sarah Chen speaking to you from 800 years in your future. The ships you see before you represent the culmination of human potential. We have returned to this moment not to fight your battles for you, but to offer you a choice. Present-day Admiral Chen stared at the screen in shock, seeing her own name attached to words she had never spoken. The message continued. You can remain as you are and face extinction at the hands of the Devourers, or you can join us in the next phase of human evolution. The choice is yours, but it must be made now. The universe is vast and filled with wonders beyond imagination, but also with threats that require us to become more than we ever dreamed possible. The alien ship that had been preparing to destroy Earth suddenly found itself in an impossible situation. Where moments before it had faced a defenseless planet with primitive technology, it now confronted an armada that defied every law of physics the Devourers understood. Captain Vexithari of the Devourer vessel Bone Harvest had personally overseen the consumption of 47 worlds. His species had perfected the art of planetary destruction over millennia, reducing entire civilizations to component molecules for processing. Never in his long career had he encountered resistance that materialized from empty space itself. Tactical analysis, Vexithari commanded in the clicking, scraping language of his people. His bridge crew, insectoid beings with chitinous armor and compound eyes, worked frantically at their organic control stations. "Unknown, Captain," replied his science officer, mandibles clicking in distress. The vessels appeared to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Our weapons cannot achieve target lock because they exist and do not exist at the same time. Through the view screen, Vexithari watched as one of the human ships approached. It moved without any visible propulsion, gliding through space like a living thing. Its hull seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, shifting between transparency and solidity in patterns that made his eyes ache. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen watched the confrontation unfold through enhanced sensors that were somehow providing detailed views of events millions of kilometers away. The technology gap between present-day humanity and their future selves was staggering. "Admiral," came Harrison's voice through the communication link, "your future self is about to make contact with the lead Devourer ship. This conversation has never happened before in any timeline. What happens next will determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of human evolution itself." On the main display, they watched as a beam of pure light extended from the nearest Black Armada vessel to the alien ship. But instead of weapons fire, it appeared to be some kind of communication link. Suddenly, every human on Earth could hear the conversation taking place in the void between worlds. The voices came through clearly, translated by technology that bypassed language entirely and spoke directly to consciousness. "Devourer vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Temporal Fleet," came a voice that was recognizably human, but carried harmonics that suggested it belonged to someone who had transcended purely biological existence. "You have threatened our past selves and our world. Explain your actions." Captain Vexithari's response came through with grinding mechanical undertones. "We are the Devourers. We consume. It is our nature and our right. This world contains biological diversity that will feed our empire for generations. Your species is primitive and weak. You cannot stop us." "Your error," replied future Admiral Chen, "is assuming that might makes right. Your second error is believing that you understand what humanity is capable of becoming. You speak boldly for a species that achieved spaceflight mere decades ago," Vexithari snarled. "We have consumed civilizations that were ancient when your world was still molten rock. And that," Chen said with what sounded like infinite sadness, "is precisely your weakness." Present-day Admiral Chen felt a chill as she realized what her future self meant. The Devourers had become so powerful, so successful at destruction, that they had forgotten how to grow, how to evolve, how to become something greater than what they were. The conversation continued, broadcast to every human mind on Earth. "Captain Vexithari, your people have been consuming worlds for so long that you've forgotten why you started. You've become addicted to destruction, but destruction without creation is just another form of death. Philosophy will not save your primitive world," the alien captain replied, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "You're right," future Chen agreed. "Philosophy won't save our world, but evolution will. Observe." What happened next defied description. The Black Armada ships began to change, their forms flowing like liquid light. They didn't just move through space. They began to reshape space itself, creating corridors of altered reality that connected distant points instantly. Dr. Ward gasped as she watched the sensor readings. "They're not using technology as we understand it. They're using consciousness itself as a tool. They've learned to manipulate reality through focused intention." The Devourer ships, which had seemed invincible just moments before, suddenly found themselves unable to maneuver. Space around them had become thick and viscous, like trying to move through honey. Their weapon systems failed to operate as the fundamental forces they relied upon were being rewritten on a quantum level. "This is impossible," Vexithari transmitted, his voice filled with the first fear any human had ever heard from a devourer. "Matter cannot be manipulated by thought alone." "Your mistake," Future Chen replied, "is assuming that thought and matter are separate things. When a species learns to think collectively, when individual consciousness merges into something greater, while still maintaining personal identity, the barriers between mind and reality begin to dissolve." Present-day Admiral Chen began to understand the magnitude of what humanity was being offered. It wasn't just advanced technology or powerful weapons. It was a fundamental transformation of what it meant to be human. "The choice before your species now," Future Chen continued, addressing both the devourers and present-day humanity, "is the same choice every intelligent species faces eventually. You can remain trapped in cycles of consumption and destruction, or you can learn to create, to grow, to become part of something larger than yourselves." Dr. Harrison's voice came through the local communication system. "Admiral, quantum sensors are detecting massive changes in human brainwave patterns across the planet. The entire species is beginning to resonate at the same frequency. The transformation is starting." Chen looked around the command center and saw her staff in various stages of what could only be described as awakening. Their eyes were brighter, their movements more coordinated, and she could swear she was beginning to sense their thoughts directly. "What's happening to us?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Evolution," Harrison replied simply. "The same process that created your future selves 800 years from now, but accelerated and guided by their knowledge. Humanity is learning to think as one while remaining individuals." On the main display, the standoff in space was reaching its climax. The Devourer fleet had arrived to witness their advanced ship's confrontation with the impossible human vessels. 12 massive ships faced thousands of evolved human craft, but numbers no longer seemed relevant when one side could reshape reality itself. Future Admiral Chen made one final offer. "Captain Vexithari, your species can continue down the path of consumption until you've devoured every world in the galaxy and finally starved to death in an empty universe. Or you can learn from us. The choice is yours." The alien captain's response would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of an entire region of the galaxy. Through enhanced senses that she was still learning to use, present-day Admiral Chen could feel the moment of decision approaching like a wave of potential futures colliding into a single point of choice. The universe held its breath and waited. Captain Vexithari stood motionless on his bridge, compound eyes reflecting the impossible sight of reality being rewritten around his fleet. For the first time in 300 years of service to the Devourer Empire, he faced a decision that military protocols had never prepared him for. "Captain," his weapons officer reported, "the Fleet Admiralty is demanding immediate action. Admiral Crexton orders you to destroy the human world regardless of the unknown vessels." Vexthari's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he studied the tactical display. The 12 ships of his fleet were surrounded by what appeared to be several thousand human vessels. But the numbers were meaningless when dealing with technology that operated outside known physics. "Open a channel to Admiral Crexton," he commanded. The view screen shimmered, revealing the massive form of Admiral Crexton aboard the Fleet Command ship World Eater. The Admiral was ancient even by Devourer standards, his carapace scarred from centuries of planetary conquest. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel pulsed with organic architecture, grown from the processed remains of consumed worlds. "Explain your hesitation, Captain." Crexton's voice rumbled like grinding stone. "These humans possess unknown technology, but they are still merely one species on one world. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. Admiral," Vexthari replied carefully, "recommend you observe the tactical situation more closely. These vessels are not operating within normal space-time parameters. Irrelevant. Initiate planetary bombardment sequence immediately." But before Vexithari could respond, future Admiral Chen's voice filled both Devourer ships with impossible clarity. "Admiral Crexton, your captain is wise to hesitate. Your species stands at a crossroads that will determine whether you survive the next 1,000 years or become extinct within the next century." The Devourer Admiral's rage was immediate and terrible. "How dare you penetrate our communications? No species has ever possessed such capability. Many species have possessed such capability, Chen replied calmly. The difference is that we learned to use it for creation rather than destruction. Admiral, your empire is dying. You've consumed so many worlds that you're running out of suitable targets. Your birth rates are declining because your species has forgotten how to nurture life. You face the same fate as every predator that becomes too successful: starvation in a dead ecosystem. Present-day Admiral Chen watched this exchange with growing amazement. Through her enhanced awareness, she could sense the truth in her future self's words. The Devourer Empire was indeed massive, spanning hundreds of systems, but it was also hollow. They had become so efficient at destruction that they had lost the ability to create sustainable civilization. Dr. Ward, whose consciousness was expanding along with the rest of humanity's, suddenly spoke with new understanding. I can sense their biological patterns now. They're not just conquerors, they're addicts. Their entire physiology has evolved to require the consumption of other species' life essence. They literally cannot survive without destroying other worlds. But that can change. Future Chen continued addressing the Devourer fleet. Evolution is not a single event, but a continuous process. Your species chose the path of consumption because it offered short-term survival advantages. But that same plasticity that allowed you to become apex predators can allow you to become something greater. Admiral Crexton's laughter was like the sound of breaking planets. You propose to reform us? We are what we are, human. We have been perfecting the art of consumption for 10,000 years. And in those 10,000 years, how many new technologies have you developed? How many new forms of art or music or literature? How many discoveries that weren't directly related to better ways of destroying things? The silence from the Devourer fleet was telling. Captain Vexithari found himself considering the question seriously. When was the last time his people had created something beautiful? When had they last felt wonder at discovery rather than satisfaction at destruction? On Earth, the transformation of humanity was accelerating. Admiral Chen could feel her consciousness expanding, connecting not just with her immediate crew but with every human on the planet. It wasn't a loss of individuality, but rather an amplification of it, like being part of a vast orchestra, where every instrument remained distinct while contributing to a magnificent symphony. I can see the mathematical patterns now, Dr. Harrison reported, his voice filled with awe. The evolution isn't just biological or technological, it's dimensional. Humanity is learning to exist across multiple levels of reality simultaneously. Through the collective consciousness network that was forming, Chen could sense the fears and hopes of every person on Earth. There was terror at the unknown, but also an overwhelming sense of possibility. Children were adapting fastest, their young minds more flexible and open to the changes. Adults followed more slowly but with deeper understanding of what was being gained. Future Admiral Chen's voice reached them again. The process you're experiencing is voluntary at every step. No one is being forced to evolve. But those who choose to join the collective, consciousness while maintaining their individual identity, will help guide humanity into its next phase of existence, Captain. Vexithari made a decision that surprised even himself. Admiral Crexton, request permission to board the human vessel for direct negotiations. Absolutely not. You will commence bombardment immediately or face court-martial. With respect, Admiral, court-martial assumes we survive this encounter. Current tactical analysis suggests that outcome is far from certain. The tension in space was palpable as the Devourer fleet found itself divided. Half the ships began moving into attack formation despite the obvious futility, while others hesitated, their captains beginning to question orders for the first time in their military careers. It was then that future Admiral Chen made an offer that changed everything. Admiral Crexton, we propose a demonstration. Select your most barren world, one that your people have already stripped of all life. We will show you what creation looks like when guided by evolved consciousness. And what do you gain from this demonstration? The opportunity to prove that there is another way. That consumption and destruction are not the only paths to survival, that your species can choose to become gardeners of life rather than harvesters of death. Admiral Chen felt the collective human consciousness considering this offer. Through their shared awareness, she could sense the enormous risk involved. If the demonstration failed, it would prove to the Devourers that humanity's power was limited. But if it succeeded, the coordinates, Future Chen continued, are being transmitted to your navigation systems now. the dead world of Xerion 7 in your home system. Meet us there in 72 hours and witness what life can become when guided by wisdom rather than hunger. Captain Vexithari accessed the coordinates and felt his breathing chambers contract in shock. Xerion 7 had been the homeworld of the Seraph species, consumed by the Devourers over 2 centuries ago. It was now a lifeless husk of rock and metal, utterly barren after being completely stripped of all biological matter. "You propose to restore life to a dead world?" he asked, incredulous. "We propose to show you that life finds a way when given the chance. The question is whether your species has the courage to witness true creation, or whether you will choose to remain trapped in your cycle of destruction." The Devourer fleet hung motionless in space as Admiral Crexton considered an offer that challenged everything his species believed about the nature of power and survival. The next 72 hours would determine the fate of countless worlds across the galaxy. The journey to Xerion 7 took exactly 71 hours and 14 minutes. Admiral Chen found herself aboard one of the Black Armada vessels, though the concept of aboard was somewhat meaningless when dealing with ships that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the vessel she occupied, if it could be called occupation, was called the Renaissance. It resembled a massive crystalline flower that bloomed through folded spacetime, its petals made of what appeared to be living light. The ship's consciousness, for it was indeed alive in ways that challenged every definition of life, communicated with her through harmonic frequencies that bypassed language entirely. "Your transformation is proceeding remarkably well," future Admiral Chen observed as they traveled through hyperspace corridors that the Black Armada created by reshaping reality itself. "Most humans in our timeline took months to adapt to collective consciousness. Your generation is managing it in days." Present-day Chen was still adjusting to her expanded awareness. She could sense not only the thoughts and emotions of her fellow humans aboard the Renaissance, but also the alien crew members who had chosen to join the mission. Several Devourer officers, led by Captain Vexithari, had defied Admiral Crexton's orders and requested passage to witness the demonstration. "The acceleration is intentional," her future self explained. "We learned from 800 years of gradual evolution that crisis forces adaptation. Your species is evolving rapidly because it must. The old patterns of thought and behavior simply cannot cope with the challenges you now face." Through the ship's sensory network, Chen watched as they approached the Xerion system. What she saw there filled her with horror and determination in equal measure. The system contained 7 planets, but only 3 still existed as intact worlds. The others had been reduced to asteroid fields, their mass processed into raw materials for the Devourer Empire. Xerion 7 itself was barely recognizable as a planet. Its surface was covered in massive strip mining operations that had carved the world down to its core. The oceans had been drained, the atmosphere processed, and every trace of the ecosystem that had once thrived there had been consumed. It was a monument to the ultimate efficiency of destruction. 2 billion Seraph lived here, Captain Vexithari said quietly, his translated voice carrying emotions that Chen was only beginning to recognize in the alien officer. They were poets and artists, builders of beautiful crystal cities that sang in harmony with their world's natural frequencies. "It took us 47 days to consume everything they had built over 50,000 years. And now you regret it?" Dr. Ward asked. She had also chosen to make the journey, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Now I question whether we gained anything worth having," Vexithari replied. "The Seraph biomass sustained our fleet for 3 months. Their cities provided raw materials for 6 new warships. But we lost something that can never be quantified. We lost the songs their crystals sang, the poems they wrote about stellar formations, the art they created from living light. The Devourer fleet had arrived ahead of them, 12 massive ships arranged in formation around the dead world. Admiral Crexton's vessel, the World Eater, loomed like a predatory moon against the barren planetary surface. Through enhanced sensors, Chen could detect the biomechanical signatures of thousands of Devourer crew members, all watching to see what the humans would do. "They expect us to fail," future Chen observed. "In their experience, death is permanent and destruction is final. The concept of restoration contradicts everything they understand about the universe." The Renaissance took position in orbit around Xerion 7, joined by hundreds of other Black Armada vessels. Each ship was unique, Some resembled geometric impossibilities. Others looked like living creatures scaled up to cosmic proportions, and still others appeared to be made of crystallized music or solidified mathematics. "Begin the demonstration," Future Chen commanded. What happened next could only be described as reality learning to dream. The Black Armada ships began to emit harmonized frequencies that penetrated to the quantum level of matter itself. Chen watched through her expanded consciousness as the fundamental forces that held atoms together began to respond to directed intention. On the surface of Zerion 7, something impossible began to occur. In the deepest strip mining pits where bedrock had been exposed to vacuum for centuries, tiny specks of green began to appear. Not plant life as humans understood it, but something more fundamental, the pure concept of growth and renewal taking physical form. "We're not creating life," Future Chen explained to the awed observers. "We're remembering it. Every atom that once existed in a seraph crystal tree, every molecule that once flowed in their living rivers, every quantum of energy that once pulsed through their bioluminescent art forms, it's all still here, just in different arrangements." The process accelerated as more Black Armada ships joined the effort. The dead oceans began to refill, not with imported water but with H2O molecules reassembled from the processed materials scattered across the system. The stripped atmosphere began to regenerate as gases were drawn from the solar wind and reformed into breathable compounds. But it was more than just environmental restoration. In the growing forests of crystal trees that were beginning to cover the planet's surface, Chen could sense something that defied explanation. The new ecosystem wasn't just alive, it was conscious, carrying within it the memories and dreams of the seraph civilization that had been destroyed. "Impossible." Admiral Crexton's voice came through the communication link, but his tone had changed from dismissive to uncertain. "Dead matter cannot spontaneously organize into living systems." "You're correct," Future Chen replied. "Dead matter cannot do this. But matter is never truly dead, it's just organized in ways that we don't recognize as life. The difference between a rock and a tree isn't the atoms they're made of, but the information that tells those atoms how to behave." Captain Vexithari was studying his ship's sensors with growing amazement. The atmospheric composition is becoming identical to historical records of pre-consumption, Zerion 7. Even the seasonal weather patterns are reforming. "Because the planet remembers," Dr. Ward said with sudden understanding. "Quantum information doesn't disappear when something dies, it just becomes harder to access. You're not creating new life, you're helping the planet remember how to live." The demonstration reached its climax as the first seraph crystal song began to echo across the restored world. The alien music was hauntingly beautiful, a harmony that spoke of mathematical principles and emotional truths that transcended species boundaries. Every conscious being in the system could hear it, and Chen realized that the song was coming from the living crystals themselves, structures that were part plant, part mineral, and part something entirely unique to seraph civilization. "This is impossible," Admiral Crexton transmitted, but his voice now carried fear rather than dismissal. "We have sensors. We have records. The seraph are extinct. Their genetic patterns were completely processed centuries ago." "Their bodies were processed," Future Chen agreed. "But consciousness, Admiral, true consciousness is information, not matter. Information that can be stored in quantum fields and gravitational patterns in the fabric of space-time itself. The seraph are extinct as individuals, but their collective knowledge, their cultural achievements, their dreams and aspirations, all of that can be restored if you know how to read the quantum echoes they left behind." The restored world of Zerion 7 now glowed with bioluminescent forests, its crystal cities rebuilding themselves according to architectural principles encoded in the planet's magnetic field. Rivers of living light flowed between the cities, carrying not just nutrients but information, stories, music that had been thought lost forever. Admiral Chen watched Admiral Crexton's ship through enhanced sensors and realized that something fundamental was changing among the Devourer crew. She could sense confusion, wonder, and something that might have been hope beginning to emerge from minds that had known only hunger for millennia. The demonstration was succeeding beyond their most optimistic projections. But success brought its own dangers. Some transformations could not be undone, and the Devourers were about to face a choice that would determine whether their species survived the next century or tore itself apart in civil war. The restored world of Xerion 7 hung in space like a jewel of impossible beauty, its crystal forests singing harmonies that had been silent for centuries. But the real transformation was taking place aboard the Devourer vessels, where crew members were experiencing something their species had forgotten how to feel: wonder without the desire to consume. Admiral Crexton stood on his bridge, surrounded by subordinates whose compound eyes reflected not the usual hunger for destruction, but something entirely foreign to their nature: curiosity about creation. The tactical displays that had always shown potential targets now displayed readings of atmospheric restoration, biological regeneration, and quantum pattern reconstruction that challenged every principle of Devourer science. "Admiral," his science officer reported, voice clicking with uncertainty, "the readings are consistent across all sensor arrays. The planet below contains approximately 2 billion life signatures displaying serif biological patterns. They are not clones or reconstructions. According to quantum analysis, they appear to be the same individuals we consumed 2 centuries ago." "That is scientifically impossible," Crexton replied, but his conviction was weakening with each passing moment. Through the collective consciousness network that now connected all evolved humans, Admiral Chen could sense the profound conflict taking place within the Devourer fleet. Their entire identity was built around being apex predators, the ultimate consumers in a universe they believed was defined by scarcity and competition. The demonstration below challenged those fundamental assumptions. Future Admiral Chen opened communication channels to address both fleets simultaneously. "Admiral Crexton, your science officer is correct that resurrection is impossible according to the laws of physics as your people understand them. But those laws are incomplete. They describe how matter behaves in isolation, not how consciousness and matter interact when properly aligned." Captain Vexithari, who had been observing from aboard the Renaissance, requested permission to address his superior. "Admiral, recommend we consider the implications of what we're witnessing. If the humans can restore consumed worlds, they can also reverse the ecological damage our empire has caused across the galaxy." "And what would that mean for us?" Crexton demanded. "Our entire civilization is built on consumption. Our biology requires the life essence of other species. Without conquered worlds to feed on, we face extinction." "That's what we believed," Vexithari replied carefully. "But what if we were wrong? What if consumption was just one possible adaptation, not the only path to survival?" Through her enhanced awareness, Admiral Chen could sense the fear underlying Crexton's anger. The Devourer Admiral wasn't just defending his species' way of life, he was confronting the possibility that everything he had devoted his existence to was not only unnecessary but actively harmful to his own people's long-term survival. Dr. Ward, whose consciousness had integrated seamlessly with the collective human network, spoke with new understanding. "Admiral Crexton, your species evolved the ability to process other life forms for sustenance during a period of galactic scarcity. But that scarcity ended millennia ago. You've been consuming worlds not because you need to, but because you've forgotten how to stop." The truth of this observation rippled through the Devourer fleet like a shockwave. Through quantum-enhanced sensors, Chen could detect massive biological changes taking place among the alien crew members. Their stress indicators were spiking, but not from fear of attack, from the cognitive dissonance of confronting fundamental beliefs about their own nature. "Observe," future Chen transmitted. And suddenly every consciousness in the system, human, Devourer, and the newly awakened seraph on the restored world below, shared a moment of perfect clarity. Through this shared awareness, the Devourers experienced something unprecedented. They felt what it was like to create rather than consume. For the first time in their species' history, they understood the joy of nurturing growth, of building something beautiful that would outlast their own lives, of being part of something larger than themselves without losing their individual identity. The experience lasted only seconds, but its impact was profound. Admiral Chen watched through enhanced sensors as Devourer crew members throughout the fleet began exhibiting signs of biological transformation. Their chitinous armor was developing new patterns. Their compound eyes were changing color, and their brain chemistry was shifting in ways that their own medical officers couldn't explain. "What's happening to us?" one of Crexton's subordinates asked, voice filled with wonder rather than fear. Future Chen's response carried infinite compassion. You're remembering who you were before you became what you thought you had to be. Every species has the potential for evolution beyond their current form. The Devourers became so efficient at survival that you forgot growth was possible. Captain Vexithari was studying his own transformed hands with amazement. His carapace had developed intricate patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent rhythms, and he could sense new neural pathways forming in his brain. "I can feel it," he said in wonder. "I can feel the desire to build, to create, to make something beautiful." But not all the Devourers were embracing the transformation. Admiral Crexton's rage was building to dangerous levels as he watched his crew undergo changes that threatened everything he understood about his species' nature. "This is contamination," he roared. "The humans are using some form of biological warfare to corrupt our natural instincts. All vessels prepare for immediate bombardment of both the human fleet and the infected planet." The moment of crisis had arrived. Half the Devourer fleet began powering weapon systems while the other half hesitated, their crews caught between ancient programming and new possibilities. Admiral Chen could sense the probability streams converging toward violence, and she knew that the next few minutes would determine whether this encounter ended in mutual understanding or mutual destruction. "Admiral Crexton," Future Chen transmitted with urgent gravity, "if you fire on the restored world, you will be destroying 2 billion Seraph, who have done nothing to harm you. If you fire on our ships, you will be choosing extinction for your species. But those are not your only options." "What other option could there be?" Crexton demanded, though Chen could sense uncertainty beneath his fury. "Evolution, not the slow random mutation of natural selection, but conscious, directed transformation. Your species can choose to become something greater than what you are. The process you're witnessing in your crew isn't contamination, it's actualization. It's your people remembering their potential." Through the collective consciousness network, Admiral Chen made a decision that surprised even her future self. Instead of waiting for the Devourers to choose, she reached out through quantum fields and offered Admiral Crexton something unprecedented. A direct mind-to-mind connection that would let him experience the collective human consciousness, without forcing transformation upon him. "No tricks, no manipulation, no forced evolution," she promised. "Just the opportunity to understand what we're offering, before you decide whether to accept or reject it." The silence that followed stretched across light years as one of the galaxy's most feared predators considered an offer that could change the fate of countless worlds. His decision would determine whether the next chapter of galactic history would be written in cooperation or carved in the aftermath of the greatest battle the universe had ever seen. Admiral Crexton stood motionless on his bridge for what felt like an eternity, his compound eyes reflecting the impossible sight of a restored world that challenged everything his species had believed for millennia. Around him, his crew waited in tense silence as their admiral faced the most crucial decision in Devourer history. "You ask me to trust the very species we came here to destroy," Crexton finally transmitted, his voice carrying undertones of exhaustion that Admiral Chen had never heard from a Devourer before. "I ask you to trust yourself," she replied through the quantum link, "to trust your species' capacity for growth and change. The connection I'm offering won't change you unless you choose to be changed. It will simply let you see the universe through different eyes for a few moments." Captain Vexithari, whose transformation had progressed to the point where his carapace now displayed complex geometric patterns that pulsed with inner light, stepped forward. "Admiral, if I may speak freely, I've experienced this connection. It doesn't diminish who we are. It amplifies it. I'm still myself, but I'm also part of something larger." "And what happens to our empire?" Crexton demanded. "What happens to the millions of Devourers across the galaxy who depend on consumed worlds for survival? What happens to our purpose, our identity, our very reason for existence?" Future Admiral Chen's response carried profound understanding. "Your empire becomes something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of consuming worlds, you begin restoring them. Instead of harvesting civilizations, you help them evolve beyond their current limitations. Your purpose transforms from ending life to expanding it infinitely." Through her enhanced awareness, Admiral Chen could sense the probability streams radiating from this moment. The future hung in perfect balance. Half the potential timelines led to catastrophic war that would consume entire star systems, while the other half led to a galactic civilization beyond anything currently imaginable. "Admiral," transmitted one of Krexthan's sub-commanders from another vessel. Long-range sensors are detecting approach signatures from the main battle fleet. Admiral Morgthak is arriving with 300 warships. If we haven't completed planetary consumption by the time she arrives. The implication was clear. Admiral Morgthak was known for her absolute adherence to Devourer doctrine and her willingness to destroy her own subordinates if they showed any sign of weakness or hesitation. If she arrived to find Krexthan negotiating with humans instead of consuming Earth, it would mean civil war within the Devourer fleet. "How long do we have?" Krexthan asked. "Approximately 14 hours until the main fleet reaches this system." Admiral Chen felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settle on her shoulders. In 14 hours, this moment of potential transformation would be shattered by the arrival of forces committed to the old ways of destruction and consumption. Whatever choice was made had to be made now. "Admiral Krexthan," she transmitted, "I'm going to lower all our defensive screens and power down our weapons. We're placing ourselves completely at your mercy. If you choose to fire on us, we won't resist. But if you choose to accept the connection I'm offering, you'll understand why we're willing to take this risk." The Black Armada ships began shutting down their reality manipulation fields, their crystalline hulls becoming vulnerable to conventional weapons. It was a gesture of trust so profound that even the most hardened Devourer crew members felt its impact. "Why?" Krexthan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you make yourselves defenseless?" "Because," Future Chen replied, "true strength isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. It's the ability to transform them into allies. And that transformation can only happen through trust." The restored world of Zirion 7 provided a backdrop of impossible beauty as Admiral Krexthan made his choice. After a moment that seemed to stretch across geological time, he transmitted a single word: "Proceed." The connection established slowly, carefully, like two different forms of consciousness learning to harmonize. Admiral Chen felt Krexthan's awareness touch the edges of human collective consciousness, and for the first time, a Devourer experienced what it meant to think with the combined intelligence of an entire evolving species. The transformation in Krexthan's understanding was immediate and profound. Through human consciousness, he could perceive the universe not as a collection of resources to be consumed, but as an infinite web of potential connections and growth. He experienced emotions that had no equivalent in Devourer psychology: hope, wonder, the joy of creation, the satisfaction of nurturing something beyond his own existence. But more importantly, he experienced memory, not human memory, but the quantum echoes of every civilization the Devourers had consumed over the millennia. Through the collective consciousness network, he could sense the dreams and aspirations of the billions of beings his species had destroyed, all of whom could potentially be restored using the same techniques that had resurrected Zirion 7. "By the void," Krexthan whispered, his voice filled with awe and horror. "We haven't been surviving. We've been slowly killing ourselves by destroying everything beautiful in the universe." The realization spread through his consciousness like wildfire. The Devourer Empire hadn't grown strong through consumption, it had grown hollow. Each destroyed civilization had been a loss of potential knowledge, art, music, philosophy, and scientific advancement that could have enriched the entire galaxy. "The emptiness," he continued as understanding dawned. "The constant hunger that can never be satisfied. We thought it was our nature, but it was the universe trying to tell us that we were moving in the wrong direction." Admiral Chen felt tears streaming down her face as she sensed the magnitude of Krexthan's revelation. Through their connection, she could feel 800 years of Devourer pain and loss, the accumulated grief of a species that had forgotten how to create and had been slowly starving spiritually even as they gorged themselves physically. "It's not too late," Future Chen assured him. "Every consumed world can be restored. Every destroyed civilization can be given the chance to continue their development. The universe is vast enough for infinite growth and creation." Admiral Krexthan opened his compound eyes and looked around his bridge with new vision. His crew, many of whom were already showing signs of biological transformation, watched him with a mixture of hope and fear. Through enhanced senses, he could perceive the quantum patterns that connected every living being in the universe. And for the first time in his long existence, he felt truly alive. "All vessels," he transmitted to his fleet, "stand down weapons and prepare for extended negotiations. We are about to embark on the greatest adventure in Devourer history, learning how to give life instead of taking it. Captain Vexithari's mandibles clicked in what his species used for expressions of joy. What about Admiral Morgthak and the main fleet? Crexton's transformed consciousness was already working through possibilities that his old mindset could never have conceived. We'll make them the same offer the humans made us. And if they refuse... He paused, studying the readings from restored Xerion 7. We'll show them a galaxy where every world sings with the combined voices of 1 trillion different forms of life, all growing and learning and creating together. The crisis was far from over. The approach of the main Devourer fleet meant that this moment of transformation would soon be tested by forces still committed to the old ways. But as Admiral Chen watched the sunset over the restored crystal cities of Xerion 7, she knew that something fundamental had changed in the universe. Humanity had demanded that the galaxy choose between destruction and evolution, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the cosmos was choosing growth. The real test would come when Admiral Morgthak arrived, with 300 warships and a commitment to the old ways that would make Crexton's transformation look like a minor philosophical adjustment. But that battle would be fought not with weapons of destruction, but with weapons of creation, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy learned to sing in harmony or remained forever trapped in the silence of endless consumption. The Black Armada began moving into formation around both Earth and Xerion 7, preparing to defend not just 2 worlds but the very concept of evolution itself. In 14 hours, the universe would discover whether hope was stronger than hunger, whether growth could triumph over consumption, and whether consciousness could reshape reality itself. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and its outcome would echo across the cosmos for millennia to come.